What the? Rewind! Slow-mo! Hello. And who do we have here? Enhance! Bright! Contrast! Tint! Sleep mode! Vertical hold! Everyone get in here!
Okay, for real, when I saw this, this whole lockpicking thing, after all that other crap we've already determined that I can't use, I legitimately almost just gave up on the entire video concept right then and there. Is that leather? I really had no idea. It's kind of hard to tell. I decided to seek an outside opinion, so I took to Twitter and posted a poll. See, another reason you should follow me. I posed the question, is this wrapped in leather? I got about a 3/4 split in the response. Most people seem to think, no, that's probably cloth. Maybe linen, cotton, but there was still some doubt from others. If this is leather, and therefore likely not vegan, well, without access to lockpicking, we'd be losing out on a ton of accessible resources.
Oh, look, nothing.
Style!
And very likely a full-on invalidation of the entire run at some point whenever we're inevitably forced to pick a lock in order to progress.
Let me in! Let me in!
I couldn't just leave this to uncertainty. It warranted further investigation. So, I've learned a lot since that very first BioShock video on this channel, where I failed to rip the texture files for that bag of potato chips. Luckily, Skyrim is a much easier game to do this sort of stuff with, so I downloaded a few programs and got to work. I found the model for the tension wrench here, and accordingly found its texture, shiv.dds. Looking at the texture up close, I feel pretty confident that this is some sort of woven cloth. See, you can kind of tell from the whole crisscrossed fibers appearance that it gives off. I mean, of course, there are non-vegan varieties of woven cloth, wool, silk, but in these challenge videos, I'm typically more willing to give cloth a pass unless something in-game explicitly states that it's non-vegan. That alleviates some worry, but this, right here, what is that? That had me concerned, and others agreed. So I dug deeper. I got that model for the Shiv back out, and I brought it into Blender. I applied the textures to the model, and then I checked the exact UV mapping coordinates of the polygons to figure out specifically where this suspect area of the texture was being applied. And baby, that is metal. It just kind of looks funky from this unrolled perspective. This means, in my humble opinion, we're in the clear to pick locks to our heart's content. And thank God, because, whew. Christ, we're in the second video, but not even through the goddamn tutorial yet. We'll be hitting some actual gameplay soon, though, I swear, don't leave. I find some ragged robes to cover my shame that don't appear to incorporate any leather, and then continue to plow through the people trying to kill me. You see, people? I have no issue with defending myself against people. We possess sapience, they possess sapience. We can both relatively consent to and comprehend the ideological structures informing our mutual conflict. Have at thee, motherfucker. But animals, on the other hand, like these frostbite spiders or this bear up ahead, as a vegan, I have a moral imperative to avoid combat with them because I'm unnecessarily imposing myself in their habitat. So you'll see me avoiding conflict with animals via any means possible. I head out the back of this cave, and officially we've now hit the open world. But I wasn't sure at this point how I actually wanted to tackle things going forward. I don't have jack for weapons or armor, and I have 0 usable spells. I'd be going up against the challenges ahead with just my fists, and so I began pondering how exactly I could make that prospect a little less tedious. One choice would have been to play a Khajiit instead. You see, Khajiit do significantly more unarmed attack damage, and unlike real-world felines, they're not hyper-carnivores, which means we could play one as a vegan without any issue. That doesn't help us though, being a lowly Imperial. But then, an interesting prospect crept its way into my B12 deficient brain. What if I was to get, say, some jewelry and just give it an enchantment that provides a bonus to unarmed attack damage? That's it. That'll be our workaround.
Wrong!
So, you need a piece of equipment that already possesses a specific enchantment in order to learn how to apply that enchantment to other equipment. And, well, you see, there are only 2 pieces of accessible equipment in the entire game that can naturally possess the Fortify Unarmed enchantment. Those are the Gloves of the Pugilist and the Ring of the Beast. That ring, unfortunately, is so far into a series of DLC quests we'll never even feasibly touch that, well, we'll just ignore that it exists for a moment. That leaves us with the gloves, but there are a manifold reasons that we can't use them, or the Fortify Unarmed enchantment in general, at all. You see, number one, of course they're leather, which means of course we can't equip them, to just even use their effects in the first place. That's not vegan. Number two, we can't even take them to the enchantment table and consume them via the disenchantment process to gain knowledge of the Fortify Unarmed enchantment to then apply to a different piece of equipment because, once again, they're leather. Number three, even if they weren't leather, they're only found on this one dude living down in the sewers of Riften, which means in order to get them, we'd have to hunt this guy down and murder him for them. Sure, he's hostile when you encounter him, and I've said that I'm fine with self-defense against sapient creatures, but we don't exactly have a reason to be down there in the first place at the moment, aside from specifically just getting these gloves, so any justification for killing this guy is going to feel way too flimsy to be ethically justifiable in my book. Now, having said that, alternatively, with a literally maxed out pickpocket skill, we'd gain access to a perk that allows us to steal equipped items. So we could just, delicately yoink them right from his hands. But, due to Skyrim's infamous level scaling system, were we to actually do this, the copious amount of XP required to max out the pickpocket skill would, at the very minimum, push our overall character level up to 17. Because of the galaxy brain game design at play here, that would mean that any meager damage bonus that these gloves provide would be radically offset by the new, fun, terrifying tiers of enemies being thrown at us by the game who would just shrug that damage off like it's nothing. Number four, once again, even if they weren't leather, we can't disenchant any items. It doesn't even matter what they're made from because, much like potions, we don't get a fancy little label that tells us where the soul used to enchant the item in the first place was sourced from. Yeah, that's right. Enchantment in Skyrim is done by storing the soul of a slain creature in a soul gem, and then using that soul as a catalyst to imbue an object with special powers. This means that any enchanted item, regardless of its material components, may have been enchanted using the soul of a wolf, or an elk, or a mammoth, or any animal really. We don't know. But get this, even if all the stars aligned, even if we somehow got the Fortify Unarmed enchantment in our catalog from a 100% certified vegan source, and had a creature standing in front of us with the sapient capability to provide informed consent for us to capture their essence in a soul gem to then use as that catalyst? Well, number five, we can't trap spirits in soul gems and use them to enchant items in the first place because we can't learn the soul trap spell. Because, as I discussed earlier, we can't learn spells because they all come from leather tomes. I won't even get into the moral debates on what could be considered, an ethical soul source in the first place, because, there are just so many other barriers in our way when it comes to enchanting. Jesus, dude. So yeah, fists. Plain old 4 base damage per hit fists. Honestly, this is where I probably should have just restarted the run and played as an Argonian for their base 10 damage, or even better, a Khajiit for their base 22 damage unarmed strike. But the oh-so-wise and increasingly intoxicated me chose, for whatever reason, to persist as is. I decided to just cut to the quick and work my way over to Bleak Falls Barrow, the crypt in which the Dragonstone, an object that the player is tasked with retrieving for one of the first mainline quests, can be found. On the way up, I spent literally, and I'm not joking here, like seriously, look at this premiere timeline, 10 minutes trying to get away from a single wolf, because I didn't want to lure them over to these bandits to be inevitably slaughtered. In this process, I greatly familiarized myself with the true power of probably the most useful ability we actually have access to in this run, abusing the game's bad pathing AI. After the wolf eventually gave up, I continued with my hike until arriving at the entrance of the dungeon, at which point I proceeded to immediately get my caved in by the bandits guarding the doorway. My damage output was next to negligible, and theirs, unsurprisingly given that I'm not wearing armor, packed quite the punch. Let's not forget, by the way, I can't heal via either restoration magic or any of the potions that I've found. So, I resorted to one tool that I've failed to mention so far: food. Food, admittedly, isn't a great option for healing. The best vegan recipes in the game only provide about 10 HP, which doesn't really even stand up to par with even the most basic of potions. But, it's serviceable when you don't have any other options on hand like we do. I'm just kidding. It would be serviceable if any form of cooking in Skyrim was actually vegan. You see, there are only two interactable cooking interfaces in the game: cooking pots and cooking spits, both of which, in their world models, always include meat? No, wait a second. No. That's what you're probably saying right now. Because if we choose to make recipes with only vegan ingredients, then the end product should ostensibly be a vegan meal, right? Well, how does that work exactly? Like, put yourself in the character's position. Are we tossing cabbage and potatoes into this big pot and then just selectively picking the bits out that we want to eat? I hate to say it, but that's actually not vegan. Whatever we throw in this pot is infused with those animal-based ingredients. Maybe not in terms of, any functional gameplay mechanic, but visibly and implicitly so. For this reason, I decided to eat my cabbage, my potatoes, my entire sacks of flour, each for only a single hit point a pop, all while these bandits tried to end my life. With a pretty decent success rate on their part, honestly. This situation was untenable. It was time to rethink my strategy. I reloaded an earlier save, did some exploring, collected alchemy ingredients, and even found this nice robe and head wrap that appear to be totally acceptable vegan attire. Couldn't find vegan boots or gloves though, so gonna have some mighty cold fingers and toes, I guess. After taking a break to do some research, I remembered that there actually are weapons in the game that are both A, uncraftable, and B, don't have any visible leather on them. The first thing that came to mind was the wooden sword, which, while the damage is a bit lackluster, I think actually even lower than my fists, it swings much faster and therefore would hopefully equate to a better damage output. I wandered around until I found a vendor selling them, purchased a pair, and then went back up to Bleak Falls Barrow for a second attempt. Donning these new weapons along with a couple homemade vegan potions, I was met with a difficult but mediocre success. And hey, one of our enemies was holding a pickaxe, which turns out to have a much higher damage rating than these swords, and was equally non-craftable and leatherless. It immediately became my new weapon of choice, and actually made me feel like I stood a good chance going forward. Unfortunately, I didn't notice until about 30 minutes of gameplay later that equipping the pickaxe actually does attach a little leather strap to your belt. So I had to undo all that progress and reload a save from back before I started using it. Great. I thought the next bit would just be, basically redoing that whole segment with the wooden swords, but barely 20 seconds back through the doors, I found my actual new main weapon, the woodcutter's axe. Funny enough, it has an identical speed, range, damage, everything to the pickaxe. But when you put it on your hip, it just kind of sticks there somehow. No leather strap, no real reason that I can tell for there to not be a leather strap either, but hey, I'm not gonna look a gift horse in the mouth. Oh, wait, actually, no, I'm not gonna accept gift horses in general because, they're not ours to gift. The vegan thing, I probably ought to rethink what euphemisms I'm using. Okay, I've been a little reluctant to actually put this out there into the world, but I'm happy to finally announce this channel's official Discord server, the Vegan Gamer Basement. I've included an invitation as a pinned comment to this video should any of you feel inclined to join. I'm hoping to keep the general vibe not directly tied to this channel itself, but rather for it to serve as a hub for individuals attempting vegan challenge runs of their own. You don't have to be vegan to post there, by the way, but if you're not, I will be making fun of you. I'd also like to take this time to thank my fabulous patrons over at patreon.com/poorduns, each of whom will be receiving the Dunce supporter role over on the Discord server, which grants them access to a mini updates channel where I'll be posting additional behind-the-scenes progress stuff for upcoming videos. Anyway, as always, stay tuned for more, and thanks for watching.